Welcome back to Healing Gals podcast, the podcast where we reconnect to who we were before the world got their hands on us. I'm your host, Molly Smith. This is Mabel Smith. Thank you, Mabel. And this week we are talking with accredited psychotherapist Katie McKenna. She's also co-author of the international bestseller, You're Not the Problem. She is just a fountain of knowledge. I'm mad about Katie McKenna. I've learned so much from her. I had her on the podcast in a previous season. I'm pretty sure it was last season 5, could be season 4, but I think it was season 5. And we spoke about narcissistic parents. I wanted to have Katie on the podcast because she often talks about this concept of the wounded healer. And for those of you that don't know, I worked for 12 years in mainstream residential care in Ireland. In that 12 years, I worked with teenagers from all different backgrounds who had like a really difficult upbringing, really difficult childhoods. And my job was social care worker. I moved up to social care leader. I was a manager, etc. In my time working in residential care, I saw so many wounded healers. I myself was a wounded healer, and I think that this is a really important topic to navigate. I wanted to explore the topic of the wounded healer because I do think that we can work with people who are vulnerable and also have the knowledge. And if you can hear breathing, it's just Mabel. Apologies. I do think that we can work with people who are vulnerable and do it in a healthy way. And I think a lot of people are drawn to caring professions because there were needs that weren't met for us when we were young and we want to give it to someone else. We also get into these professions because maybe we feel that we're only valuable if we're giving. So I wanted to do an episode of the podcast on this so that we give some information, some wisdom to people who are in the caring professions and how maybe they can get a bit healthier so that they're not giving to vulnerable people from a wounded place. That's my intention with this episode. There is no judgment. I do think that the social care system at large is, after working in it for 12 years, I do think that it's quite broken. I think the systems that are in place, the regulations that are in place are quite broken. I have my own theories about it. I feel like we, at one stage in our history as Irish people, gave the care of the most vulnerable people in our society to the church, and so much abuse happened there. And then when the Ryan report came out, the Kilkenny report came out, and we saw the abuse that young people and children were suffering. She can hear Kev. She's gone. When those reports came out and we saw the abuse that was experienced, we came up with all these regulations so that that didn't happen again. And by putting in the regulations that we did, I feel like the pendulum has swung too far. However, this episode is specifically for people in caring professions who are giving from a wounded place. And I just wanted to provide some information on how maybe we could explore that. If you're interested in that kind of healing and that kind of exploration while working in a caring profession, I wanted to have this out there in the world for you. So a big thank you to Katie McKenna for doing this another episode with me. This will be in 2 parts because myself and Katie, when we get chatting about something that we're passionate about, we get chatting. So enjoy part 1 of this episode. I hope you get a lot from it. I certainly always get a lot from Katie McKenna. I will pass you over to the episode and I'll talk to you at the end. And remember, you're good enough exactly as you are, in case you forgot, Angel. Katie McKenna, thank you so much for coming back on Healing Gals podcast, gal.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
I'm delighted you're here. I knew when we finished our last episode, I thought she'll be returning. If she's kind enough, she will be coming back here, because I think everybody got so much from that episode around narcissistic parents. And I think a lot of people, like a lot of the feedback that I got from that episode, if you haven't listened to the episode that I did with Katie McKenna, please go back. It was phenomenal. And a lot of it was one of the episodes that I got the most feedback on.
Wow.
And a lot of people giving a lot of, oh my God, that's me. You know, that was kind of the most common thing. Oh my God, that's me. And in the episode, I was like, oh my God, that's me, you know. it was a revelation. So thanks so much for being so generous in that episode with all of your wisdom and your time. And today we're going to be talking about the wounded healer.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you a bit of background as to why I wanted to talk about this. I worked in social care for 12 years and it was mainstream residential care. So I was working with teenagers that were in the care system for a multitude of reasons. They may have, their parents might have been in addiction. There's any sort of social issues you can imagine that would affect a child's upbringing, development, and then lead to kind of very difficult interactions when kids come into their teenagerhood and behaviors are challenging because their needs haven't been met, and it's a very, very fraught time in families' lives. We as social care workers would take care of the teenagers, so from 13 to 17, and then they move on after that into hopefully aftercare, but those services are very much in demand and not cared for appropriately in our country. But that's a topic for another day. The reason that I wanted to talk to you about the wounded healer is because I myself identified as a wounded healer. Not at the time, but retrospectively, I look back and think I was very much a wounded healer. My experience in my childhood, my life, my whatever, led me to want to give and give and give. And I now know that's from a place of because I wasn't given those things. So you're trying to kind of give to other kids maybe what you didn't get, or a lot of us find our value in giving and in being of service to others, and that props up our self-esteem. So I wanted to have a conversation about it because as I became more healthy, I suppose, and as I became more aware of my own patterns and what I was doing and why, and my motivations behind my behavior, I realized I was looking around and I was thinking, oh God, there's a lot of people here, and there's a lot of people working here that are here because they are wounded and they're trying to meet a need, fill a hole, fill in the blank. And I thought, I wish we knew about these things. One of my main concerns about social care workers entering that field is that it doesn't require any therapy. So you have all of these people who are motivated one way or another, and I'm not saying they're all wounded healers, certainly not, but there's a lot of it in that sector, and there's no requirement for you to reflect on your own experiences. There's no requirement for therapy, and when you're going to be a psychotherapist, it's essential. You need to do X amount of hours. So I wanted us to kind of explore this topic and maybe give some insight to people, and maybe give some information where people might reflect and say, okay, maybe I'm given from that place. Does it or does it not eventually lead to burnout? We'll cover that in a few minutes. But why don't we start with, what is the definition of a wounded healer?
It's really interesting. I think if you look it up in the dictionary, you won't find wounded healer. I don't think. You can correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
or maybe we can check it. So there is no definition of that. But what I think the wounded healer is, and what you are talking about and describing so accurately, is somebody that is helping from the place of that wound, is somebody that is, their whole value system and identity is to be in servitude to somebody else and to be in service. And on the surface, that sounds healthy. And this is actually, when we're talking about healthy communities, this is really important, that we are not so individualistic and locked away, and that we actually are giving and have reciprocal relationships. But when you're talking about a wounded healer, you are talking about that they are solely giving, and you're talking about burnout, that it's constantly giving, but that there's a lack of awareness. It sounds like when you're talking about where this is coming from. And at the beginning, I think this is just who I am. So really, we're talking about a trauma response here. Yeah. And so when we're talking about the wounded healer, this is a title or an aspect or a behavior from that trauma response, where we are in this place of fight or flight, and we don't have a sense of identity. When you were describing then as you became more aware, as you became more in touch with your own wants, right, what you wanted, your own needs, your own preferences, your own boundaries, where I can say no, where I see this is not my responsibility, where I have such empathy for the thing that's happening in front of me, but I get to also prioritize me. I get to have my own life. I get to have my own feelings. I get to have my own relationships. Yeah, I get to pour back into me.
Yeah.
This then is building identity, and we have to go back to the beginning and see where the child wasn't allowed identity in first place. So there's three aspects that I look at this when I look at the wounded healer, and I do think the wounded healer is a real thing. I want to be clear when it's not a diagnosis, I
Sure.
suppose, should I say, when you're saying what's the definition. It's
Yeah.
not a diagnosis, it's a terminology that we would use to describe typically, and I think you mentioned social workers, therapists, nurses, anyone in a caring profession, teachers, and you're 100% right. Not all. Not all. A lot of people can grow up from a really healthy enough environment, have a healthy sense of self, and enter into these professions from a healthier place. But the wounded healer, I would look at three aspects. I would look at where is there a lack of identity? Where have they grown up in fight or flight, right? This constant hypervigilance. And also then you talked about when this is our value system, when this is our identity, this would be linked into then where is their safety and where have I learned that it's safer to give, to hide myself. And this links back into then the hypervigilance as well.
Okay. Okay. So I have a few questions that
Yeah.
I think that I wanted to ask you, because you speak a lot about the wounded healer in your work and on your presence online and in your content, right? Where did that come from? That whole wounded healer term?
I don't know where it originated. I talk a lot about the fawn response, which a lot of people then recognize and register the wounded healer from, where I constantly give and sacrifice myself, where I can be able to identify your wants and needs, be so attuned and identify your emotions and anticipate your needs before you even notice them and need them, right? So I would make a wonderful nurse, social worker, teacher, and I was going to say therapist, but actually no, because we need to have our own identity to be able to separate and not project on as a therapist, which is why it's so important for us to be able to do our own therapy, to be able to separate this.
Okay.
But when somebody is in that fawn response, in what you're talking about there, the wounded healer part, when somebody is in that trauma response, there's such a disconnect from identifying their own wants and needs or their own emotions. So if you change your tone, or if you look at me funny, or if you see something, I'm going to be able to anticipate what you might want or need. If you hesitate with something, I might be able to read and be like, oh no, she really doesn't want to do that. And that's fine. And I'm going to allow you that space and say, no, that doesn't have to happen. But am I able to identify that with me when I don't want to do it? Or am I going to be led from a place of fear, obligation, and guilt? The fear of disappointing you and letting you down. The fear of, and when I say you my friend, you my partner, you my boss, you my co-worker. Now if you're asking me to do something, the fear of disappointing you, the fear of you being mad, the fear of you thinking that I'm a really selfish, mean person. And I feel obligated, almost like this compulsion that I have to do this thing to help, right? Because this is what I believe about myself and this is what a good person is. And I never want to be the mean, selfish person I grew up with, right? I never want to be like them. And if I do say no, I'm going to feel so guilty. I'm going to feel so guilty, and I'm going to feel shameful. I'm going to think that I'm a bad person, a bad friend, that I'm unlovable, that I'm useless, that I'm pathetic, that I'm all of these things. And so the fear, I'm going to operate from that. And I'm going to, because I want to avoid all these things.
Yeah.
I want to avoid the guilt. I want to avoid the shame. I want to avoid feeling like a bad person. And so it looks like I'm doing this thing for you. When people say I'm a people pleaser, right? These are all the terminology. Like people pleaser, again, that's not a diagnosis.
Yeah.
The fawn response is describing our nervous system when we're in fight or flight, freeze or fawn.
Yeah.
And there's also collapse. And so this part, it looks like I'm doing it for you. Right. So the wounded healer, I'm doing this for you, but really I'm still meeting my own needs, but I'm unaware of it because I'm trying to avoid feeling something. I'm trying to avoid the discomfort that I'm going to feel. So it looks like I'm being helpful.
Yeah.
But it's because I can't tolerate these emotions in me, because I've never been allowed to have my own emotions, because I've had to be hypervigilant and be attuned to one or both parents. When we look at where this is born from, and anybody that has grown up with addiction, with a parent with a mental health illness, with a narcissistic parent, with generational trauma, a lot of people recognize boomer parents, yeah, seen and not heard, kids outside shut up, like your opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so when a child grows up in this, that they're not able to express themselves in any way, and then when there is a threat of the parent's anger, the threat of a parent's minimize and criticism, dismissing, stonewalling, right? So that silent treatment.
It's so painful.
It's so painful. And so this is a threat. And so then they become hypervigilant to be aware and watch out for these threats to avoid them. So the child will be able to know what a parent means by that look. Everybody knows the look if they're familiar with it. The look, the tone, the sigh, the turn of a head, the what is said, and then also what is unsaid.
Yeah.
Anyone that grows up in these family systems, they'll know that, oh no, well, when my let's say when my mother says, no, you go on, you go on, you do your own thing, I'm grand.
I'll be fine.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And they're like that, no, that's not what she means. And
That's
so
that's warning,
the alarm
warning.
system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my alarm system has to learn to read in between the lines, has to look for the hidden meaning always and go by that. So now I can't trust the words that's coming out of someone's mouth because I have to be hypervigilant and read the body language. This is where people think that they're an empath, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
wounded healer, empath.
That was one of my
pleaser.
biggest lessons from our episode. You said, I don't think that there is such thing as an empath. That's a trauma response of having to be hypervigilant and be constantly assessing if everyone's needs is met so that you can be safe. And I was like, wow.
The trauma response is the hypervigilance. Empath is then a name that we put on it. People pleaser is a name we put on it. Wounded healer is a name we put on it to describe either the emotions or the behaviors. But it is hypervigilance. It's your nervous system not being able to switch off. It's when you're talking about wee wee, it's that alarm that is constantly scanning the room looking for threats and danger. And this is the part that people struggle with because they've been gaslit and told you should be grateful, it's not that bad, get over it. They question it themselves and it's like, well, it wasn't that bad, and there were good times, and there was times that my parent was nice to me. So like I wasn't, constantly, and they think that it's in this terrified state all the time. No, it's the way I describe it, it's like walking on eggshells. I know that in a moment that if I laugh the wrong way, if my parent sees me behaving in this way, maybe laughing with a sibling, or if I told somebody else something and didn't tell them first, or if they think that they're being criticized, especially in public or even in private, any of these things, it's all hell's going to break loose. They're going to be angry, and either angry overtly, name calling, criticism, dismissing, overtly shaming, or passive aggressive, silent treatment, withdrawing love and affection, stonewalling them, ignoring them.
If somebody, I find it very interesting because what we're describing then is somebody who has basically a PhD in reading the room. Do you know? Like we're describing someone who is so highly able to anticipate, not even see that needs need to be met, but see that needs will need to be met in the future, in the immediate future, or in a bit further down the road or whatever. Why is it then that somebody who, as we say, has a PhD in reading the room really struggles to identify their own needs if they're so good at identifying the needs of others?
I love that language that you're talking about, right? If we use that they have a PhD in what we're talking about here is like behavior analysis, right?
Yeah.
To analyze somebody else's behavior for fear of the threat, right? Because we want to avoid the threat. This is the whole thing. Because ultimately, if I upset my parent, if I upset my mother and father, no, I don't want to do that, right? So I'm avoiding how I'm going to feel or how they're going to make me feel, their behavior, right? And so now we look at, well, why don't they have a PhD in being able to identify their own emotions?
Yes.
And so we look at, well, what happened when the child was sad? When they said, Mom, that's not fair, that's not nice. Dad, don't shout at me. Mom, I don't like, he's your favorite or she's your favorite. Like you're always criticizing me. What is said in those times when the child is having that language? What is happening when the child in any way centers themselves? The child is being conditioned to anticipate, prioritize, and have the burden of the parent's emotions while their own is simultaneously being ignored. Not only ignored, actively suppressed.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't get to exist, and this is where their identity doesn't get to exist. And so here again, if you're talking about nurses, therapists, look at this place where I can attune to you and see you and be like, what's that, Nightingale?
Florence Nightingale.
Nightingale, yeah. If I look at instrumental parentification, this is where the child is burdened excessively with tasks and jobs. So a lot of oldest girls relate to this, but really it can be any role in the family where they have to raise their younger siblings, right? They'll often even have a slip and they'll say the kids. Oh yeah, I minded the kids when I was younger. Yeah, they're not your kids. Yeah. And it's this responsibility, paying bills when they're really young, having that responsibility.
Sorry to interrupt the episode, gals, but I have to show you my mat. This mat depicts the cliffs of Moher. It is stunning. I wanted to show you this mat in person because I just don't think the photos do it justice. In my opinion, one of the best things about these mats is that number one, it's machine washable. I bring my mat to the forest all the time and she is in the machine and she is like brand new. Can you see the shine on that mat? That is because this mat has a suede finish on the top. It is thick, bouncy, tea colour rubber, so it's non-toxic. But look at the finish. When your bare skin is on this mat, it does not stick to the mat. The imagery is absolutely stunning. Once you put it down, it's down. It's not moving. Listen to my podcast for a while. You will know I am a champion of women and women in business. Dara Mats is an Irish-owned, woman-run business. These mats are designed as a one-time purchase, so you will not be replacing this mat every few years. This is a lifetime purchase. This is an investment in your practice. It is an investment in your day, and you will not regret buying yourself one of these mats. They're also a fabulous gift for someone if you have something special coming up. So if you want to invest in yourself and buy yourself one of these gorgeous mats, go to daramats.com and Healing Gals listeners get a discount. Enter Healing12 at the checkout to get 12% off your very own Dara mat. Now, back to the episode.
Booking medical appointments, caring for an elderly relative.
Isn't it really common that I've heard a lot of kids say that when debt collectors or when somebody was coming to collect the ESB money or something, they were sent to the door to haggle or to, ward off people coming for money.
Yeah.
Like even at that
I
age.
watched that TED Talk. Was that Nicola Connolly-Byrne?
She is one person that has said that.
I remember her talking about that on the TEDx, and this is where the exploitation happens. So from what I remember from seeing that, it's what you said. It was when the debt collector was calling to the door. I don't know if it was a TV license or the ESB bill, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the parent would be at home, but they would send the child to tell the somebody at the door that they weren't there. This is where somebody's empathy can be weaponized, because anybody here listening to this, they can be like, well, like, come on, if you were the parent and you were at home and you had no money and you didn't want your ESB cut off, is this not something that we would do? Like, is this not okay to send your child to do that? Do we not have to make a sacrifice? And this is where, when somebody looks at these incidences as one isolated incident and they try to draw a black and white from this, this is not an isolated incident. And in that TEDx talk, it's not an isolated incident. This is a child that's been exploited, and this is just one of the ways they describe the exploitation. Yeah. And this is where what I call, and I hear loads of other therapists call, death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
And we're describing one, and that is one very harmful cut. But if a child grows up in an environment and one time they've had to do this thing, or one time when money was low and they had to pay a bill and contribute. Mm-hmm. This is not what I'm talking about at all.
Yes, yeah.
This is a continual, persistent exploitation of the child. They don't get to keep their birthday money. Here in Ireland, maybe their communion or confirmation money. And then when they earn, they have to hand up money from a very young age. And this is not about responsibility. This is about exploitation and taking, and not allowing your child or supporting your child in succeeding in them building up their own savings, because the parent is so entitled that ultimately, no, that's mine. And that's how they view that. So they're the two different types of parentification. And then when we see this with narcissistic parentification, this is where we're talking about active abuse then on top of it. So the other can be neglect and exploitation, but this is then actively shaming the child, that when you do something wrong and upset me, you are a bad child, you are mean, you are cold, you are selfish, you are heartless, you are thoughtless. Yeah.
You don't care about me.
You don't care about me.
Yeah.
That is devastating to a child.
Devastating, I would say. Yeah, well, I know. Yeah, yeah.
Right? So that part, that fear, takes the child away from ever having an idea of, not ever having an idea, but doubting their own motivation. Because that's so confusing, right? You're saying, I don't care about you, but maybe I said no to you. Maybe I just had a difference of opinion to you. Maybe I just wanted to do something without you. Or maybe whatever that is,
Yeah.
I just wanted to spend my own money on sweets. Or maybe I don't want to hear about you talking to me about, your relationship anymore, and you sharing all this about me. And maybe I don't want that burden. And maybe it's not on me to constantly go home and keep your mother or father happy. Let's look at where the child is praised. And the parentified child is praised by the whole of society. You're so good to your mother. You're so good to your father.
When they're giving, when they're of service.
When they're giving, you're so mature for your age. You have a wise head. Such wisdom, old head on young shoulders.
Yeah.
All these things. So now this is where my goodness comes from. This is the value that I have. And so then it makes such sense that now I'm going to enter into roles where I have this, and it gives me such value and identity. And it's wonderful to love your work. I love my work.
Yeah.
I love my work. I know from you that you talk about that you love your work. And I would be devastated and sad if that was ever taken away from me. I don't know how that would be, but if it was ever taken away from me and I didn't get to do this. But it's not my identity. Yeah. And so this is separate then when you're talking about you, and maybe even if you want to share, when you're saying, and I became more aware of my own wants and needs. I became more aware of the places where I was giving and maybe was resentful when I wanted to say no. This is identity building.
Yeah. I suppose, so I'm finding it so interesting that it really comes back to, I'm saying to you, how does somebody who is so highly attuned to other people's needs and hyper vigilant around anticipating other people's needs, how do they not see their own? And really it comes back to that their needs were never honored. So it sounds like when, if you were to think about it, you're thinking they see needs, surely they'll see their own needs, but actually it's the opposite. When you are highly attuned to everyone's needs and your needs never get to be honoured and are actually suppressed and shamed, and your identity is removed, then you can see everyone else's needs all day, and it would never even occur to you that your needs are there and that they are on par with other people's needs.
You're right. And if we look at it in terms of the reason that they're so attuned to the other person, think of this as a bear, right? Yeah. Imagine there's a bear outside. Now imagine that we're going to have this conversation. What are you going to be doing?
Worrying about the bear.
Right? Hypervigilant, right? You're going to see, you're going to know where it is, what's happening, right? You're going to abandon this conversation because that's the priority, right? But it's not that the bear is the priority. It's that your safety is the priority, survival.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And so here, imagine that, right? You're going to either, we're not going to ever fight the bear, right? Because the bear is going to win. But we might scream at the bear if that's going to work to get it away. With a narcissistic parent, we're going to be annihilated. There's going to be such an
never
attack.
Scream.
Right? So we're going to either try to escape, flight. Where's it gone? Where can I go? How can I avoid it? When it comes into the room, am I going to freeze? Don't make a sound. Don't say anything, right? I've lost my voice. I can't speak. Is it there? Don't move, right? Or am I going to try and fawn to it? Please it, right? For a bear, maybe we're going to throw it a steak, right? But imagine if the bear then calms down. This is unrealistic when we talk. Sure. But imagine now that we're going to give to the bear. Imagine if I have loads of steaks and I can keep giving to the bear. I am safer the more the bear is happy.
Okay.
I am safer. What's going to threaten the bear with the narcissistic parent is now if I want some steak, or if I want my own steak, or if I want something else, or if I have any needs, it's going to be a threat to the narcissistic parent. And so it's not only that my wants and needs are not honoured, it's that they will be seen as a threat to the narcissistic parent. Okay. I can't have them. I remember I described before, even now I'm like, how much do I share of me? Because there's sometimes in the podcast where I shared this as that this was a client story, but actually it's my own.
Wow.
And I shared that once before that it was my own. I remember seeing my I won't just say one of my kids, and he was only I think he was about a year. He could have been about 10 or 11 months. And my parent was feeding them. And I was sitting there, and it was, the usual like pureed food, and it was like mashed up in a bowl, and they ate the majority of it. Like, I was delighted. And they didn't want to eat anymore. And so even a child that doesn't have language still has their no, because he was shaking his head.
Oh.
Yeah. You know the way a kid does that.
Yeah.
Mouth closed, like
Yeah.
so tight.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And she was saying, look at the wee bully. Look at the wee tickle. Yeah? Come on, open your mouth. And I was like,
Oh my God.
yeah. And I was like, Ma'am, I was like, he's full. Look at the wee tickle. Come on, open your mouth. And I was like, Ma'am, put that down. Like, he's had enough. She inevitably was mad at me for then.
Whoa.
Yeah. But this dynamic starts that early of the child having no. I see it play out as well. Let's say language, that if a child has their no in any way, if a child doesn't want to say hello to somebody, if a child doesn't want to do something, right, that's me and you finished.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not mad. I'm just really disappointed in you.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, you even cringe
Yeah,
there. It's like, oh. And that's because it's not only the words, it's the behavior after that. I'm going to withdraw my love and affection to you. I'm cutting you off. I'm telling you we're finished because I'm so mad at you. And I'm going to be passive aggressive. And no matter what you do, I'm still going to be annoyed. And so the child then is forced into a fawn response to apologize for something that they didn't do. They're not going to understand what they did wrong, but they're going to believe, because they believe the parent, that they did something wrong. And I'm sorry, and I didn't mean it, and I shouldn't have done it. And they will learn from that interaction that whatever the thing is that I did, whether I said no, whether I was nicer to somebody else and she or he was jealous, whether I shared something, whether I had a difference of opinion, whether I said that the thing that she didn't like wasn't nice and I like something else, whatever the thing is, that's a threat, and for me not to do that anymore.
Okay.
And so it's the same. The bear now is outward, that I have to fawn to them and keep them safe. But there's also, it's a threat when I look inward. Is this familiar to you or anyone listening, that if your friend shares something with you, that you're like, oh my God, I'm really glad they shared with me. Problem shared is a problem halved. I'm glad they could come to me. But maybe you talk about when you were the wounded healer. What was that like for you if you ever had to share with somebody else? Or if you ever had to ask somebody for help?
Scary.
Scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And can you talk a wee bit about what the fear was?
Sure. If I'm sharing something vulnerable with somebody.
Yeah.
So, like, I suppose the scary part of that is that they might use it in the future, or like owing somebody something, was scary for me at one stage, because I felt like if I share this with them and they give me this support, and then what if I'm not there for them when they're having a hard time? What if I'm busy or whatever? And they're like, I was there for you that time, and
Okay.
or that they would use it against me in another way.
So you're scary, right? So it's a fear. So there's a threat here. And the threat is, what I'm hearing, loss of autonomy and loss of agency, right? Loss of my no. Because if I lean on you and ask you for that thing, the fear is that you're going to weaponize it at some stage down the line. You're going to throw it back at me. And so if I now say no to you, it's going to be, well, what about that time I did that for you?
Yes.
And so I'm going to lose my autonomy. I'm not going to get to say no. And so I don't want that to happen. I want to keep my independence. So, and I've learned this. I've learned that if I share anything, that it's not safe, a threat, and it'll be thrown back up at me. It'll be shared with somebody else when I didn't want them to. It'll be twisted. It'll be warped. And also that then when I want to say no after everything I've done for you, look at all those things. And when I picked you up 2 years ago, and when I went over and did X, Y, and Z for you.
Yeah.
So this is a threat to the nervous system. This is like the internal bear, that I have to avoid that, because I want to avoid this thing happening.
So when you are constantly feeling like any look inwards, it starts the nervous system, like activates the nervous system, that's why we can't look inwards then. And then we end up in these professions where we're just replaying the whole scenario again.
It's all about safety. And so it's ever going to keep us safe. And we haven't learned healthy interactions where I can lean on somebody. And the fear also, because if I've also learned that I can't trust you to lean on you because you're eventually going to disappoint me or hurt me.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not safe to lean on you. So I've learned that I have to be hyper independent and do everything by myself. And then also there's this extra element that if I do lean on you or share or ask for your help, it's going to be weaponized. Everything with the narcissistic parent is going to be
Yeah.
weaponized against me. So this is all about staying safe. And it's really interesting what you're talking about here. Okay, so if this thing happens and you said, and then our nervous system is activated, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's an assumption there that if we imagine our nervous system like a 0 to 10,
Yeah.
and there's nearly an assumption there from you, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, that you're operating from a place of 0.
Yeah.
And now, if I have to ask for help, oh, my nervous system is activated now till a 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I actually created a quiz for this very reason. Now, I created it specifically for parents, so for adults who've grown up in dysfunctional family dynamics, and they lose their shit with their kids. They ended up getting really frustrated and either shouting or threatening consequences or, just going like, what's the point, and ending up giving in, right? And creating this vicious cycle. And they think they go from 0 to 10. Whereas actually, when you grow up in hypervigilance, your base is
not
never
at zero
a
at all.
It's not. And so your baseline is going to be, let's just say if it's around a 5 or a 6. And so now I'm hyper aware of the bear, the thoughts of even asking for help. It's even before the thing is even in my head because I'm hyper vigilant. It's not safe.
Oh my
So
God.
it's not that I'm operating from 0 and now I think, oh, I need help to move this couch, and oh no, that's a threat if I ask that. My baseline is operating from that hypervigilance. It's the language that I was taught. It's what I walk, live and breathe. And so now I can be elevated further into the 10. And that's really scary. So now I'm not going to ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw there was a video on social media there like a couple of weeks ago. Some guy was walking down the road and he's part of the queer community, so he has nail varnish on. I think he was wearing a skirt. He has kind of a mullet, some eyeliner and stuff. He was walking into a shop and this man just got up and just went from him, was calling him every F word, every, all of these things. And I was watching it and I said to my husband, what number is he on? So this is so interesting that you're saying this to me. I said, how angry, upset, what number do you have to be on that you get to 10 by seeing somebody walking in a skirt that you think shouldn't be wearing a skirt, or seeing someone with nail varnish, And it's that kind of, that man's not operating at a 0. He's at the fucking tip. He's on a 9 waiting to explode to a 10.
And I would add an extra element to that this is actually, that's aggression, right? That's dominance
that's
and control.
separate?
That's completely separate when I'm
Wow.
talking about a nervous system. And a lot of people that grow up in narcissistic family dynamics conflate anger, healthy rage with narcissistic rage and this aggressive behavior. That is completely separate. That is somebody that has such an insecure sense of self that is actively attacking and hurting and harming and projecting and being cruel and vicious and vile. That is abuse. That is abuse. And when I'm talking about a 0 to 10, I'm not talking about abuse. Yes, I am talking about behaving in ways that you don't want to behave, but I'm talking about if a parent, let's say, goes to a 10 and shouts and even screams at the, just get upstairs or go to your room.
Yeah.
They afterwards are filled with regret and remorse and guilt and feel so sorry, and they want to repair it and they want to do better and they want to apologize to their child and they promise it won't happen again.
Yeah.
And then inevitably when they're triggered, it can happen again and they're trapped in this loop. This person over here, I would highly doubt, I would bet money on it, that they didn't feel guilty for their interaction afterwards, that they didn't feel remorse.
That's such a really, actually, I know that I'm after adding an example that doesn't fit, but I actually think that that's very useful for us to see the differentiation of that.
And this is why it's so important to name abuse as abuse. And this is why when children grow up in narcissistic family systems and they're like, and gaslight themselves, well, it wasn't that bad and she didn't really mean it and she had it tough and, he had his own things and this is just the way it is and you just have to get on with it. And when they don't label it as abuse, they see that there's, then let's say as the parent, they can see that it's like a tightrope now with my own child. And I either have to be perfect and get everything right, Because if I make a mistake and fall off that tightrope, I'm going to damage them and harm them so much, and I'm going to traumatize them, right? There's no space for making a mistake. Whereas healthy parenting is not a tightrope at all. Imagine it like a football field.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a football field.
Loads of room.
Loads of room. And I can make mistakes. And I can healthily repair from it. If I'm not operating from the system of hypervigilance, not only not operating from the system of hypervigilance, but not letting that fear, obligation, and guilt lead my my behavior.
Yeah.
That quiz, by the way, it's a free resource. It's on my website. If anybody wants to check it out, katiemckenna.ie. It's a short quiz that people can take and get the answer in what, basically to find out what their number it is. Again, it's not diagnostic, but it's to give them a sense and an idea of how much they're holding. And I describe the nervous system like a smoke alarm. So imagine that how much you're holding is, let's say, how much smoke is already in the day when you wake up, right?
Okay.
Dreading the day, what's going to happen, all the things that you have to do, your needs don't matter, you're so used to caring for everybody else, there's tiredness and exhaustion, you haven't had your own fun, you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself, or if you want to do anything good for yourself. This is very much the wounded healer that even we're talking about here in the parental role.
Yeah.
And now if your baseline is a 5 or a 6, and now your kid starts mammy, right? That's another bit of smoke. And now they hit their sibling. And now they won't get out of the house in the time. And now, you ask them to do something, the simple thing, get off their tablet, empty the dishwasher, do the thing, and they say no and they're giving you cheek. And now you blow up at this thing.
Yeah.
But you're not aware of one, where you've started from, and see that actually it's not taken much because you're holding so much here.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say that is so useful for parents who are overwhelmed so regularly.
Yeah.
Which we, I was that girl too. Like, I 100% relate to that, yeah.
Here, I have 4 kids.
Yeah.
The whole reason that I did this was because of my experience in that. And when I had kids, I was a therapist before I had kids, right? So I thought, right, I was able to recognize all the dysfunction. I knew exactly which parent I didn't want to be like. I knew which behavior I wasn't going to repeat. I saw the harm in the enabling parent. And I had all this intellectual knowledge, as so many people have, right? They have read all the books, they've done the therapy, they know all these things intellectually. And then when I had my own kids, I was being triggered in ways that I didn't realize that I was going to be, and was like, what the hell is happening here?
Wow.
And so that's what led me to write. I have a course for parents who have done the work. This is not for somebody who is not aware of their own family dynamics and is only starting. If that is anybody, if they reach out, I can give them other resources. My parenting course is for parents who can recognize the harm, who recognize then in ways that they're behaving in ways that they don't want to. And they can apply band-aids and temporarily change it, but ultimately it ends back up in the same cycle, the same battles, the same rows, the same arguments.
Okay.
Yeah. And they too will have such a fear of asking for help, getting support, exposing themselves.
How hard is it then to give?
To find out that, what if I'm the problem? What if it's me? And I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared I want change, but I'm also scared to. So it's the same nervous system that's operating that can be holding them back also.
Okay.
One of the main things that I hear from people is that I wish I preserved their stories. I can't tell their stories the way they did. I can't sing their songs the way they did. Well, that's where Evertold comes in. Evertold is a legacy storytelling platform, essentially a personal podcast, if you will. I come to you with compact recording equipment, and I sit with the person that you want me to interview in the place where they are most comfortable, and I ask all the questions that you want asked. I can ask them to sing their favourite song, I can ask them to tell their favourite stories, and you will then have that video recording saved in a beautiful treasure box on a memory key, just like this one, that can be plugged into any television, laptop for the rest of time. You will never regret doing an Evertold, but you may regret not doing it. So get in touch if you would like your very own Evertold for you or someone you love, and make sure their stories are not lost to time. Healing Gals podcast get a discount, so make sure you quote Healing Gals podcast when you contact me. I'll look forward to speaking to you.
So in my time working in residential care, the 12 years that I spent working with teenagers with like really complex needs, very challenging behavior, there were assaults, there were, you know, a lot of self-harm, a lot of like really difficult crisis management regularly, you know, 12 years of that. And I saw a lot of staff members that were intent on like, I'm the one that's going to rescue them, you know, I'm the one. And I also have to admit to that, like in my early years of my career, I used to go home and just think about the kids that I worked with and think no one's going to mind them the way I mind them. Oh my God, they're like, there's a whole staff team being paid hundreds of thousands, but no one can mind them the way I can mind them, you know. I wonder, is he okay? I bet you, I know who's on shift today. I bet you this is after happening. Oh my God, they're not going to be able to stop him. I used to really pride myself on like that. I had this relationship and I could rescue them, you know. I'm the, like, I looked into fostering. I was like 22, 23 with like a 4-year-old teenage mom, and get into my 20s, get my degree, end up working with these teenagers that were so troubled and really like after having just the most extreme circumstances, like God, like all I wanted to do was rescue them, you know. And I thought I'm the only one that can do that with them, you know. I know, girl. I know. Now I know. But at the time, deluded. But I would love to know, what is your thoughts on like the difference between helping and rescuing?
I love that question. And I love the example you gave because it's going to make it even easier to explain it. And what I'm hearing when you said delusional and nearly in a mocking, like, oh, delusional, when I look at kids that grow up in these environments, right, where they have to be hypervigilant and watch their parent, the parent gives them the illusion of power. You made me mad. You upset me. You pissed off your father. You upset your mother. Go and apologize. You have so much power. You can make me happy and you can make me sad. You're the only one I can talk to. What would I do without you? You annoyed me so much now I can't do anything else. You can either rescue and save me, and will you just do this thing for me? And whether this is just mind the kids, right? If this is instrumental, just do them, just do their homework, do the dishes. And often it's not in a pleading way. It will again be that I'll be angry if I come home and it's not done. So many people relate to, even in adulthood, then if their partner drives in and they see and I can't sit down, I have to jump up and start cleaning.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because my nervous system, my amygdala, my hippocampus has learned this is a dangerous interaction. And so how can I avoid it? I can start cleaning. So then you can't criticize me when you come in the door.
Wow.
Yeah. This can also be a healing experience. This can be a real corrective experience where the nervous system learns that if somebody walks in and they're like, oh, well, what are you doing? Yeah. And they're not mad because I might go, well, I was after cleaning. I was after working all day and blah, blah. And I'm only after sitting down. I didn't say anything. That's okay. Yeah, it's like, holy shit, I actually don't know how to respond to this. So we have to be aware of it first. But it's this power, it's an illusion of power, right? The narcissistic parent, it's me and you against them. It's the illusion of power that you are so bad and wrong if it's the scapegoated child. You are so bad and wrong and you're everything wrong with this family. And so look how powerful you are, the child, to cause such disruption. I'm so powerful in either that I can help to make it better, or I'm so powerful in my badness and meanness that I can destroy a family. And so now you're talking about believing in the illusion of that power as an adult, that I have the power to rescue and save these people. You're laughing. Well, sorry, what's happening?
I just didn't put that together before.
Okay.
Jeepers. Wow. Oh my God.
Okay, but look, doesn't it make sense?
It makes so much sense.
Look how powerful I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also in terms of fear, look at the consequences if it's not me in that place doing that with them. Look at the consequence. They're going to be left destitute. Nobody's going to love them. They're going to be homeless.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't care about me, because that's what you've been told with a narcissistic parent. If you prioritize yourself in any way, go home in the evening, you don't care about me. I don't want them to think I don't care about them. I know their every move. I'm hypervigilant. And you can be right about this. You can know them in a way that nobody else does. But that doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to do a good enough job.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And so this is the illusion of having that power. And we don't have that power over anyone. Think about this in terms of...
Gal, I'm sorry, but I just like, I can't believe that that is how that comes together. Like, it's like, I just never considered that us telling kids that they can influence the room, they can influence whether a whole family is happy or a whole family is upset or the whole mood of the house is destroyed, giving them that power, I would have never even considered it like that, actually gives them in adulthood the illusion of power to be able to influence
But it's
situations.
an illusion of power in childhood.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
Oh,
because the
of
child
course,
can't do that. And it's an illusion of power. But this is what the narcissistic parent tells them.
Wow.
And it's an illusion. Because if the child had power, maybe mommy would have left daddy. Maybe daddy would have left mommy. If the child had power, maybe you'll save your money and behave differently. Maybe you'll parent the other kids. Maybe you'll go to therapy. Maybe you'll share this with somebody else. Maybe you'll take accountability. If the child had power, you the parent, you'll apologize for what you did.
Wow.
The child has no power. They have no agency. They have no phone, they have no money, their rational brain, their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until they're 25. They are sworn to secrecy with everything. What happens in between these four walls stays here. You don't get to tell anybody. When we look as a therapist or as a nurse or as a social worker, there is these support systems in place in healthy environments, right? There is peers, there is for therapists, for us, like there's supervisors. Even if we have a fear of asking a friend for help for ourselves or sharing something, there's the choice of it, even though the fear, it won't feel like I have choice because I'm paralyzed and I can't do it. But the child has none of these things.
No.
And in narcissistic family systems, it's not just a parent. So here, if they in any way prioritize themselves, the siblings will shame and ridicule the child. Yeah. Why didn't you do that for mom? Don't be so sad. You know she wants you to do that. Why don't you just... Right? They're going to reinforce this.
Look what you're after causing now.
Look what you're after causing now. Yeah. That's such shame in language. So look how powerful you are and you're after causing this whole shit. And really, it's a projection because the other child, the sibling, is so scared.
Yeah.
They don't want their mum being angry or their dad. It's not safe to be angry at them. And so they're angry at the sibling.
Yeah.
And so there's this dynamic. Not to mention the aunties, uncles that say, oh, well, you know what they're liking. We all know what they're like and just keep the peace and they're always like that and sure. Yeah, that's just it. We just have to get on with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the family system believe the image that the parent is so wonderful, so good. I know that there's a therapist online and he talks about his own mother being a therapist. And it's like, Jesus, how can I say anything about my therapist parent? Because they're so wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah. That podcast that we talked about earlier, she talks about how her mother in the community was seen as all good, all great, so giving. And so how the child stands a chance to ever criticize the parent that is seen and maybe even worshipped by everybody as being great. So it's an illusion of power. They never had it. And here, that illusion of power that we have then in these scenarios, that I am in any way a savior and can save and fix you. I can't. You're talking about now help. I can be a support. I can be a support and I can help you. And for a child, it's very different, right? Because a child can't advocate for themselves. But when you're talking about an environment here, like in social worker, there is this team, as you're saying, of support. This also plays out in adulthood in relationships, though. Let's say if somebody's in addiction, no matter how much help I want to give, or even if I think I can change their behavior, I can't. No. They have to be willing to want to help themselves. And if you recognize all the work you've done in healing and recognizing these wounds and wanting to change them, how much effort and time does that take?
Yes, years.
And for myself too, years, and still unlearning and
of course
evolving. That takes a willing and a want. So there is then as well an illusion of power that you somehow by your words or your presence are going to like fix somebody or heal somebody or love somebody better.
Yeah.
We can't love somebody better. But that's what we're trying to do with our narcissistic parent.
Yeah.
Love them into loving us, loving them to being safer.
And when we're trying to do that, when we grow up doing that, we enter a career where we're trying to rescue, care someone into being better, even love someone, showing someone love, like in the appropriate way that you can when the relationship is
Yeah.
a staff member and a young person, you
But
know.
let's look at where this does somebody a disservice and can infantilize somebody. Let's look at this in work then with elderly, or even somebody that, let's say OT, and somebody's after having an accident. Let's go with this with an elderly person. And if they're shaking their hand, eating their soup. Yeah. The wounded healer in that situation might want to rescue. That's rescuing. I'll feed you.
Okay.
But is this actually going to do a disservice to the person, and they're going to lose their independence, and they're going to be infantilized and now be more dependent on you? Or do they need a bigger spoon? Ask them, do you need help? Right? The rescuing is, here, let me do that.
Okay.
Right? That's what rescuing looks like. Asking, do you need help? Because maybe they do. Yeah. Maybe they need something like a plastic kit. Maybe they need their plate put in further. Maybe they need a bigger bowl. Maybe they need a straw. One, asking them. Don't assume, right? Because this is the hypervigilance. I have to anticipate what you need and give you the thing. When we grow up in healthy environments and have a healthy sense of self, I can ask you, do you need help?
And it's not stirring a discomfort in you that I'm struggling.
And it can stir a discomfort that's different than being led by fear.
Okay.
Yeah. I have to learn to tolerate discomfort. For the child with the alarm system, imagine now if I'm on a 5 and now I'm up on a 6 or 7, that's going to be more intolerable.
Okay.
Yeah. So the work is actually, and the work like that I do in the parenting course is, how do I reduce my 5 to a 4.5? How do I reduce my 5 to a 4.2?
Is that what's coming up in what I'm visualizing is my daughter has a stammer, and when I was raising her, there's another person in my family there's actually quite a few people throughout my family line that have stammers, and I watched people do things for them all the time. I had to do things for them. I had to speak for them. So when my daughter, I think, did we talk about this the last time? When my daughter started speaking and she was speaking with a stammer, I was like, I am never going to speak for her. But the discomfort that it stirs in me is like when I'm watching her. I used to make her go up to the till and speak to as many strangers as possible in the appropriate ways. Like if we had to collect something, I'd be like, here, I'm gonna mind, we go for a cycle, I'll mind the bikes, will you go in and ask them for this thing, but and make sure she had to ask someone for something, you know. And I'd be like watching from the shop, and she'd be like, you know, like, and her face was going red and she's really struggling, and my instinct as a mom is to run in and save her, you know. But my motivation to want a different life for her than what I saw in my other family members that were disempowered, couldn't do a job interview, couldn't speak up for themselves. Anytime anything gets a little bit fraught with emotion, they just explode and leave because they can't actually have a difficult conversation, you know. I really didn't want that for her. So my question to you is, does your motivation for what you want for, like, I don't know how to word this properly, but I'm sure you'll help me. Does your motivation have to be something other than fear, so that you don't end up swooping in to rescue?
Firstly, you have to be aware of the fear. What you're describing there is empathy, which is so wonderful for your daughter, right? That struggle is real. She's going to be there. She might be embarrassed. And look at that, I'm saying might be, right? We can assume and project, right? Because, oh my God, if that was me, I might be embarrassed. So we can assume that she's embarrassed. She mightn't be, depending on her experience, right? So one, being clear of that, right? She might be embarrassed, she might get frustrated, but depending on the supports that she had and depending on the interactions that she's had with people, this might be uncomfortable, but it mightn't be an absolute terrorizing experience. So you have empathy for her struggle, which, by the way, the narcissistic parent lacks empathy. They use motivational empathy, right? Guilt tripping people, but they don't have that empathy that you're talking about for another person. That is a wonderful thing to have.
That's a relief.
Wonderful. The thing then is, where does my empathy have limits, and that it doesn't go into fusion and I rescue? Okay.
Fusion.
Yeah. So my empathy, and I think this, it will maybe even help clarify the difference between helping or supporting versus rescuing. If it's you and I'm standing outside the shop window and now they're struggling, and now my empathy is healthy, but it's not empathy. Now I'm imagining and fusing with my daughter, thinking, now she might be really struggling in fear, but if I fuse with that, right, and think this is terrible for her and she's not able to tolerate that, and what am I going to do? I'm going to be led by that fear. It's fear that I'm coming from that place.
Okay.
Whereas you were able to recognize your own empathy, and you were able to tolerate the fear and the discomfort by prioritizing her needs.
Okay.
Yeah. By prioritizing what she needed. In the same way, with the instance with the soup, with the older person, I might be uncomfortable and I might be even embarrassed for, like, if that person's spilling soup everywhere, but I can get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you need? And in that moment, you were able to see what she needed. Yeah. Think of this in terms of a kid that when they are starting to walk. Yeah. Remember your little kid when it's starting to walk and their legs, the tension.
Cuties.
How difficult that is for them.
Yeah.
We're so conditioned in society that this is normal, that they have to struggle to be able to learn to walk. Imagine if at all those moments that you couldn't tolerate that their muscles weren't strong enough and that they were under pressure and that they kept falling and it was frustrating. And so every time they struggled, we lifted them. I'll just take you here. I'll just do that for you. What ultimately is going to happen to the child?
They're not walking.
They're not walking.
Yeah.
And for a narcissistic parent, what might be the gain in that for me?
They're more dependent on you, so
More
they don't get freedom as quickly as
They're going to be isolated. I might even get, I can be the martyr and help, and they will be dependent on me, and they will be isolated. They won't get to have a healthy sense of self and self-esteem and have that freedom. And so this is why narcissistic parents with criticism, that especially their daughters, right? Because the difference with a narcissistic mother with their daughter, the narcissistic father can do this, but when I think of mothers around body image, criticizing them, and anything, it's too anything, too fat, too skinny, too much makeup, not enough makeup, too sexy, not sexy enough. There's always a criticism.
The patriarchy loves a narcissistic mother, I'll tell you that.
It does. Yeah. It does. But it's this that chips away and erodes somebody's self-worth.
Yeah.
Or not even allow it to develop.
Yeah.
And so this part, can I tolerate your struggle and not rescue myself? Not rescue for myself to alleviate my discomfort.
Yeah, because rescuing for yourself would be to do the thing.
Do the thing.
To remove any of the struggle that's happening in front of you.
And it looks like I'm doing it for you, but it's because I can't tolerate it.
I'm sorry to end the episode there, gals, but you have to come back next week for the second part. I think Katie's knowledge about the narcissistic parent and how when young people grow up in trauma, these are the behaviours that we are displaying in the world. So I found it quite interesting that in discussions about a wounded healer, that we always end up going back to childhood trauma, which is not surprising, but is very interesting. So come back next week for the second part. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to know anything about Katie, her courses, her parenting course, her book, go to katiemckenna.ie and you'll see all that information there, or you can follow her on social media. She's tagged in the show notes. And all that's left to say is, gals, have a fabulous week. You're very, very precious, and I hope that you know you're good enough exactly as you are and you deserve a great life. Bye, gals.